blasphemy.
Now, no Novocaine, it dulls the senses.
Something's spoiled, and I don't mean your garbage.
Right.
I mean that we're actually going to start talking about Atomic Blonde. And since the show is called Something Spoiled, you need to have seen the movie.
This is a conversation with the audience that's already seen the movie. So we're going to be spoiling all the way through without a lot of warning. This is your warning. So I watched the movie about an hour ago, just finished watching it because I decided if I was going to have this conversation, I wanted to do it fresh. You saw the movie on Thursday, right?
Yes.
And had a little more opportunity to digest it. I had a good time at the theater. It was really It really was one of the better movies I've seen at the theater recently.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been disappointed a lot. So don't make too much of that. It was actually a very very stylized, very fun, very fast watch. It was exciting from beginning to end. However, there was moments that just strained credibility. And I struggled at times. There have been comparisons to John Wick and to James Bond. I had trouble with some of the fight scenes. They were beautifully choreographed. I don't want this to sound wrong. I know when you're going to have an action figure that's a female, you want the fights to be convincing, just to kind of buy the rest of the movie. And there were early scenes in the movie where she was fighting like the local police, making easy work of it. Later on, though, when the villains became more threatening, the fight scenes were going on 20, 25 minutes, it just became fiction.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. They did their homework. They made a conscious effort to choreograph the scenes to make it look like this woman is holding her own in these situations. And I think earlier on they were more successful. Once she's coming up against other assassins and so forth, it seemed like she's holding her own. There's a scene in the stairwell fight where she gets clocked with something across the face. And she goes down and she's on the ground for a second, and then you can see she collects herself and pulls herself back together again. I understand the nature of the fight scene. They want it to be visceral and gritty and ugly.
Right.
And, I get that, and I think they definitely accomplished that. I just think, once again, it's really hard to strike that balance with showing you that kind of a fight scene with a female character that you just ultimately don't have to crank up your suspension of disbelief to like an 8.
Don't get me wrong. I struggle watching Tom Cruise beat people up because I know he's like 5'2".
But I mean, it's always been easier for to watch fight scenes with men. I mean, and quite frankly, I'm not sure that they're any less guilty. But it does become more a hurdle to get over. Say in contrast to say the recently released Wonder Woman, which was a fantastic movie. But Wonder Woman has superior strength.
If I understand that there is some reason why they've got superpowers, it's easier to buy than just watching a 120-pound woman, toss 300-pound Russians off her shoulder. And
Charlize Theron did as much as she could to sell those. She did, as we talked about, a lot of her own stunts. She trained for several weeks before she shot those scenes.
And I should say this also: I don't necessarily even believe that Daniel Craig is going to beat up all his enemies in the Bond movies, but in the Bond movies, there's always a wink to the camera. It seems to be understood, hey, this isn't real. This is very stylized. You're not really supposed to believe this, and that actually helps me as a viewer because I understand. Okay, I know what I'm watching. If the movie looks like it's taking itself too seriously and they want you to believe it, then I struggle with it.
But and I don't suppose you can accuse this movie of taking itself too seriously. It's
probably not. That's probably not fair.
It's very heavily stylized. It's shot with that muted color, which is kind of a homage to the fact that this is adapted from a graphic novel. The '80s soundtrack is brilliant. I think it definitely helps to immerse you into the world of Atomic Blonde. It is stylized. I do think that they succeeded in creating their own unique style. It borrows heavily from other genres, of course. It definitely feels very 80s, which I don't think that's a mistake.
Right.
It doesn't have that Michael Mann bathed in blue, but there are blue undertones to the muted color palette for the color correction. with the exception of one scene that takes place in the club. But I mean, for the most part, I think that if you go with the whole style over substance, which to me is not a big sin, if that's what film is art after all. But this isn't a documentary, and never pretended to be.
So let's talk a little bit about the plot and even the premise of the movie. And this is where I struggled, I think, a bit. And again, I just watched the movie fresh out of the theater. I didn't go back, didn't to have the plot points filled in where I've missed part of the story. The premise of the movie is that they're looking for the list. They keep saying, we have to find the list. Who has the list? Where's the list? And as I understood it, the list was a list of operatives.
Right.
CIA operatives, or they would have been British.
MI6.
So these are names who are going to be compromised if they didn't find that list.
Right.
So there was a moment in the movie where they said Spyglass, the person who had the list, also memorized the list.
Right. Eddie Marsan.
Eddie Marsan. So now, so their plan B was to get Eddie Marsan across into West Berlin, right? That's what that scene was about. They're trying to get him to West Berlin. Would those soldiers not have been compromised now because he now knows he memorized the list, but there's also a paper list out there hidden in a watch somewhere?
Maybe you can make the argument that character is thinking that it's more of an asset to have the list committed to memory than to not, because if the list itself is unrecoverable, then he becomes valuable in the absence of the list. The flaw in the plan becomes clear when the list actually becomes accessible. Then,
right.
A person with a memorized list becomes a loose end, and that's exactly what happened.
Right. Okay. I want to feel that maybe there was something in the book that just didn't get quite translated as cleanly to
well,
the movie.
Very seldom does anything, whether it's a graphic novel or an actual novel, does it translate cleanly to the screen. Like I said, given the actual ending of this movie, where we find out that Theron, South African pronunciation, is actually CIA operative,
which you already know,
because you've seen the movie. More thorough job of dropping you the clues. The clues are there, and once again, maybe the intention by the filmmakers is to have this be one of those movies that you rewatch to kind of find the devil in the detail. Certainly, the scene in which, in the middle of the movie, where Broughton meets with John Goodman's CIA character. And there are some clues there that are dropped that she is actually an American operative. It was suggested that her accent slips. I mean, once again, I'd have to watch it again. And upon rewatching it, I may roll back some of my criticisms. To me, the criticisms don't make the movie unwatchable.
No, I agree. I didn't want to. We probably will give the impression that we didn't like it.
No, I mean, no. We're critiquing a movie, so
yeah.
Our job is kind of to point out where it worked and where it didn't.
And it's more fun to talk about the things we struggled with than it is to praise.
Exactly. I mean, if we spend the whole time praising the movie, we'll end up holding hands.
Right. Next thing we'll know, we'll have a couple glasses of Stoli and a bathtub full of ice.
Yes, correct. The problem with marrying these two very different genres, because the spy movie is its own genre. Bond movies were never ever known for having overly complicated plots. Never.
Right.
Bond movies are about the gadgets. They're about the bravado. They're about some white knuckle fight scenes, and of course the man himself. Atomic Blonde. She is the title character. It certainly is about the Atomic Blonde. It is about Theron's character, and she plays the part, I would say, is about as perfectly as you could ask any actress. Played it at this point. I can't imagine anybody else having done it better. And I think that if they wanted to accomplish putting a female lead out there in an action movie as a spy, treating her no differently from any other male protagonist, they did succeed. Yeah. And I think the movie succeeds on that level, and several others. It was entertaining. At no point did I want to get up and leave. For me, I think that if just being critical, if not at the risk of being hypercritical, I think if you do a better job of laying down those breadcrumbs, that ending, which has been called convoluted, for me isn't quite as convoluted.
But I think we both enjoyed it.
I definitely did.
But we're interested in your opinions as well. So if you want to weigh in on the conversation, put your comments in the space below the video, and let us know what you think.
Absolutely. And meanwhile, we're going to be doing this hopefully every week or every other week.
And we'll have new cast members.
Absolutely. And more spirits.